Hi, I'm Rich from ccbrewhouse.com. Today we'll be demonstrating the basic techniques for brewing your own beer using the partial mash method. For those of you that are new to home brewing, we'd like to teach you the easiest way to brew. The best way to get started on your first batch of beer is to begin by first purchasing an ingredient kit like this. Within these kits you'll find all the ingredients you need to brew your first batch along with detailed instruction sheet. Within a partial mash, you will typically find the malt extract. Now this can be either a liquid malt extract like this one, also called an LME, or a dry malt extract called a DME. You'll also find a bag of milled specialty grains, or rather a few bags of milled specialty grains like we have. Now make sure that these are in well vacuum packed bags so that you know that your ingredients are fresh. You'll find some muslin bags for steeping your grains and your hops when you're doing your boil. You'll also find some vacuum packed bags of hops. Now make sure that they are perfectly vacuum sealed so that you know that they're fresh ingredients. You'll find any other additives that need to be added during the last 15 minutes of your boil to add some aromas or flavors to your beer. You'll find what's called a Warflock tablet. This is usually used to clarify most home brews. Most importantly, you'll find a bag of yeast. This is what will be fermenting your beer, converting all those sugars into alcohol. And you'll find a detailed instruction sheet on how to brew your first kit.
The first step is to steep your specialty grains to add a specific malt character to your batch of beer. In order to steep your grains, use a 5-gallon kettle to heat 2 to 3 gallons of clean water between 150 and 170 degrees. We are using a digital thermometer for the quickest readings. Place your muslin bag into the hot water, and when the water is at the correct temperature, turn the flame off so that you do not scorch your grains when creating your mash. It is a good idea to stir your grains in slowly into the water and periodically after this point. This process is called the mash portion of brewing. Let your mash sit for about 60 minutes. After steeping your grains, it is time to remove them from the water and place them in a colander or strainer to do what is called the sparge process. The sparge is designed to rinse out the extra colors and flavors from your specialty grains. To do this, simply run a small amount of hot water over the grain bag, repeating this process until the water that runs through the grain comes out mostly clear. Let the bag drain, but do not squeeze the extra liquid out, as this can add unwanted flavors and aromas that are caught within the grain. The solution you have now is called a sweet wort, which is just unfermented beer. At this point, you will no longer need your grains for your beer. The used grains are great for compost and have many different baking uses as well. The next step is adding your malt extract to the sweet wort. Malt extract is the extracted fermentable sugars from malted barley. Malt extract is very concentrated and can be quite syrupy. Make sure that the heat is still off. You need to stir the wort while you add the extract to guarantee even dispersion. It is important to get all of the malt extract out of the bag, so we usually rinse it with some warm water, using a large spoon to scrape out any leftover. At this point, take a cup of your sweet wort and let it cool for an original gravity hydrometer reading. When the malt extract has been mixed in thoroughly, bring your wort back to a boil. This can be done on your kitchen stove easily. It is very important that you keep a close eye on your boiling wort at this point, as you will notice foam start to rise. You need to turn down the heat or use a spray bottle with water to keep the foam from overflowing. Just make sure that you keep the boil going. At the beginning of this boil, you will want to put your hops in a fine mesh bag and add them to your boiling wort for the full duration of the 60-minute boil. It is a good idea to set a timer to keep track of your time. As you're boiling your hops, you will be extracting the bitterness of the hops to counteract the sweetness of the wort. With about 25 minutes left in your boil, you will want to rehydrate your yeast if you are using a dry yeast. To do this, follow the instructions on the yeast packet. If the packet does not contain instructions, take about 4 ounces of water and warm it up to between 90 and 105 degrees. Sprinkle your yeast into the water and seal the container with plastic wrap. This process will rehydrate your yeast so that it will begin to ferment faster when it is pitched into your wort. With 20 minutes left in your boil, it is time to add your Warfluck tablet. This tablet will be responsible for coagulating the proteins that cause haziness and will force them to fall out after fermentation to clarify your beer. This will improve the presentation of your beer. At this time, you'll also want to sanitize any tools or materials that will come in contact with your beer after it is cooled. There are many liquid, powder, or capsule type sanitizers you can use to accomplish this. Fill a large bucket with a watery solution of sanitizer and use a funnel to pour about 2 gallons of it into your fermentation vessel. Swirl the liquid around and rinse clean, placing a sanitized bung on top so that you can keep any other bacteria out. Place all other items you will be using later in the remaining sanitizer in the bucket. Some recipes may call for a flavoring or aroma addition that should be added during the last 5, 10, or 15 minutes of your boil, depending on what your recipe calls for. You want to add these additions according to the recipe by placing them in another fine mesh muslin bag and steeping them in your wort. At the end of the 60-minute boil, remove all steeping bags and cool your wort as quickly as possible. You need to cool your wort so that the temperature will not harm your yeast. Make sure to cool your wort quickly, as sulfur gases that are released during the boil may settle in your wort when the boil stops and can cause a bad taste in your beer. If you do not have a heat exchanger such as a wort chiller or counterflow chiller, the next best way to cool your wort is to place your kettle in an ice bath in your sink or even in your bathtub. You may also want to add cold water directly to the wort to bring it down in temperature quickly. Use a funnel to pour your wort into the fermentation vessel. Top up to your 5-gallon mark with more cold water and take a measurement of the temperature to be sure it is under 80 degrees. When the temperature is right, you may now add the yeast solution to your wort. Place an airlock in the rubber stopper and put that on top of the carboy. The airlock is important for letting CO2 produced from fermentation out of the fermenter, but also for stopping airborne bacteria from entering. It is good to place your fermenting beer in a cool, dark place that is out of direct sunlight. The fermenting process will take a bare minimum of 2 weeks before you can move on to bottling or kegging your beer. For more information on the brewing process and to purchase the necessary equipment and supplies, visit www.ccbrewhouse.com. We offer everything you need to make a great tasting batch of beer for a cheap price. If you enjoyed this video, like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram at ccbrewhouse for daily updates on new techniques, equipment, and information about homebrewing. Thanks for watching, and feel free to post any questions in the comments section below. Cheers!